Welcome to Stigma Shakers podcast. I am your host, Ali Hensley, author, speaker, and stigma shaker of the best kind. This podcast is all about shaking and breaking up taboo into digestible chunks, which we like to call our social smoothie. In this podcast, I will ask the difficult questions that can be hard to digest because everyone deserves a little balance in their mental health diet. And let's face it, folks, the only thing normal in this world is different. So my question to you, can we make truth the next biggest trend? Today joining me is the incredible Amanda Goff. Amanda is a best-selling author, journalist, and former escort under the alter ego name of Samantha X. Amanda started her career as a tabloid journalist in her hometown of London before moving to Sydney in 2000, where she worked in TV and magazines. Then, at 37 years old, after 2 kids and a separation, Amanda completely changed her life. After walking out of her 9-to-5 job, Amanda became Australia's most high-profile escort, Samantha X. Since then, Amanda has written 2 best-selling books and is the focus of constant media attention, gaining fans and critics worldwide. Now deciding to leave the escort business behind her, Amanda now lives life unapologetically despite facing global judgment and stigma. Amanda continues to inspire women to lead the life they want without explanation. And most of all, Amanda encourages vulnerability so that all people can be their unique and original stigma-free selves. Hi, Amanda. We're pulling faces at each other. already can set the tone for this. Thank you, Amanda, so much for joining me today on the Stigma Shakers podcast. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thanks, Ellie. Thanks for inviting me.
In context, when we were kind of looking at the topics that we wanted to cover on Stigma Shakers, of course, we know one of the biggies is the sex work industry. Mm-hmm. And of course, I met you on Instagram, I reached out and we had a phone call. And I think that phone call was just ridiculously effortless. The whole point of this podcast today is to talk about, of course, the industry head on, but to really look at the relationship between that when it comes to shame, debunking some myths that we have, and hopefully putting the stigma back in its place. Really kind of just putting it out there. Why is there a social stigma? Why is there a stigma when it comes to the sex work industry?
Well, mostly for women, there's a stigma. You know, there's lots of male escorts out there and they just get slapped on the back and like, oh, you're lucky you, mate, you get paid to have sex. Whereas women in the sex industry have always been and probably will always be stigmatized. You know, it's the Madonna and the whore complex, really. You know, you're either a good girl or you're a bad girl. And bad in society with women usually means women who are highly sexual. And to be honest, Ali, the sex industry wasn't even about sex, but that's a whole different conversation. You know, like, while I'm not, ashamed of my choices, and I did what I did at the right time for me, I look back and I think, I can't believe I did all of that, you know, because I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 recently. And while it's not an excuse, it certainly is not an excuse. It sort of helps me understand the reasons behind my behavior. When a woman is in charge of her body, and when she decides what to do with her body, and if she wants to become a sex worker, then we're demonized, you know. And I don't know whether that's because we make money from men, because sex workers wouldn't exist if men didn't exist, let's be honest.
Supply and demand.
But yeah, I mean, I think there'll always be stigma with women who work as sex workers, always. Even though we say we're a tolerant society now, I do question how tolerant we really are.
I think we like to herald ourselves as incredibly progressive until it's not. And I think that's right. Can be a little bit like the Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to society. But so what did the day look like where you said, this is what I'm going to pursue now as my next career choice / income?
Well, I was looking through the newspaper. No, I wasn't really. I saw the ads. No, the industry always fascinated me. Even as a teenager, I used to go to the south of France and see, at that time, as with children's eye, with young girls' eyes, I saw the ladies of the night looking very glamorous on the street in the south of France, and I had no idea what these women were. And then when I interviewed, as a journalist, I interviewed some strippers in a strip club in Sydney, Australia, and I was so blown away by how professional they were and how strong they seemed to be, and in control and confident, and everything I wasn't. And they said, why don't you put on a dress and come and dance on the stage? And of course I really wanted to, but I couldn't because I was a journalist doing my job. But it really got me thinking that maybe, I wanted a bit of what these women had, a bit of self-empowerment, confidence.
I was just about to say, is there a sense of, because you know how sometimes people think that people who are selling sex in some kind of context for money, they're being taken advantage of, they're being exploited. But it sounds like what you're saying is that it almost sounded like you wanted to reclaim some confidence through your sexuality.
Yes, that's exactly right. And look, I'm not naive to say that all sex workers have this experience. I know that I'm privileged, and I was seeing high quality clients. I was working the hours I wanted to work. I was charging a lot of money, and I am, of course, there are women who do sex work to survive and who aren't so lucky and are in not so great situations. But I can only talk about my experience. And yeah, I felt, having had a whole range of experiences growing up where I was exploited by men, it was my chance to get my power back, and I did. And I say that sincerely, regardless of how I feel about my industry now. I only ever felt in control.
Did you feel vulnerable during or after seeing a client?
No, I didn't feel vulnerable. There was a part of me that felt unworthy of a healthy relationship. And that the snapshots of intimacy with clients was probably the best I could do. And that happy normal relationships was something I couldn't do. So sex work was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I'm sure there's an awful lot of people out there who are sitting in unhealthy relationships, trying to do anything and everything they can to remedy them because of self-worth.
Yeah. Look, I think if you're trying to do everything and everything to remedy a relationship, I would question whether it's the right relationship for you to be in. I definitely saw, as Samantha, lots of men trying to fix relationships, in a funny way, seeing sex workers, but a lot of men were staying together with their partners because leaving wasn't really an option because of money, kids, etc., or what people thought. And a lot of people, I think, are scared of being on their own. I'm more scared of being in an unhappy relationship, to be honest.
I think it's more painful staying in an unhealthy relationship than it is to exit one. Now, I understand that.
I definitely agree with you there. Rightly or wrongly, when I'm in a relationship with men, I lose my power very, very quickly. And I've, like everyone else, I've been hurt and I've been, emotionally abused and blah, blah, blah. But when I was Samantha, my pseudonym, I was always in control. I had the power in the bedroom. I had the power out of the bedroom with them. And, men would be quaking in their boots. Whereas in my real life as Amanda, I just didn't have that confidence and strength that Samantha did, Yeah, there's two very different personas, and I sort of wished I could be more like Samantha in my real life. And even now, at my age, 49, I have no idea how to behave in relationships as Amanda, because I had the backing of Samantha in those days, and I don't have that anymore.
So the background for the listeners, for me, is that I have a condition which I shared with you, Amanda, which is called MRKH. Yep. And there's a ton of information out there about my story. But because I was born, let's just drop it in there, with an underdeveloped vagina, no uterus, I had to go and make my vagina. My whole relationship around sex and intimacy was very, very skewed. And I also took on a persona of Sarah, who would go to the pub and she would be desirable and confident, and I think a lot of people, irrespective of their setting, do put on that mask, because somehow we do wear different faces and we do have different personas, at work or within a family dynamic, and I think that's not necessary. I think it's so broad. What was the reaction of your friends when you made that choice to become Samantha X?
I don't think anyone was surprised, those people that were close to me. I think they saw it coming. I always loved men. I always loved the company of men. I talked about it for years before. So I don't think anyone was surprised, to be honest. I think, and because I did a really good job of convincing them, it was really normal, and and how uncontroversial the industry is, really, how normal clients are. I don't think anyone was really surprised, because I've been talking about it for years.
Did you find people disassociated from you?
I feel that not close friends, really, or no friends, really, but there is definitely an aspect of, let's meet for coffee, but can we go to your house? Especially for men, if they wanted to go on a normal date with me, they didn't want to be necessarily seen with me.
Did they say that, or did you pick up on that?
I picked up on that, yeah. And now, if a man asks me out, which they very rarely do these days, and if they hint that they don't want to be seen in public, then I just tell them to get fucked, basically.
Bondi dating, let's just kind of let it lighten up a bit. It's a shit fight.
Yeah,
dating in Bondi is hard. No, it is a struggle.
I don't date. No
dating apps, no dating.
Not really. I flirt with the dating apps, but I don't know. I think when you've been through trauma with men, and I'm talking about as Amanda, not Samantha here. I'm in a good place at the moment, and I just don't want to. I am a little bit burnt, and I don't have the protection of Samantha now, so I have to be very, very cautious and careful.
What would you say are some of the key misconceptions or myths around escorting?
Well, the number one myth is that the sex industry is about sex, whereas I quite more than often didn't have sex with my clients. Men would come to see me for a whole variety of reasons, connection being number one. Now, connection is not just about penis and vagina. It's about emotional connection, intimate connection. Clients, more than not, I'd go for dinner, go for lunch, go for coffee, go on holidays. I've had to talk a client off from the ledge, literally. He's wanted to kill himself. Wow. I became a therapist as a sex worker. Sex is sex is sex. Sex is over very quickly, usually takes 2 minutes. These men are not spending thousands of dollars and booking hours and hours because they want sex. They need something else. They need something more. Another myth is that all the clients are weirdos. The clients I met are completely normal, whatever that means, professional men. Some were married, some were separated, some were divorced. They were all professional men. They all had a trade. They all had jobs. They all were, quote, respectable men. So those are the biggest two myths, I think, that all clients are rapists and that sex industry is disgusting about sex, because I used to joke that my single friends had more sex than me and I was in the industry. So those are the two biggest myths, I think.
So would you say the cool clients were lonely, vulnerable, in need, as you say, emotional intimacy with a person, and you provided that, which made maybe they weren't getting at home, or were they too, I feel like I'm doing stereotypes because I want to say he's the, he's the fierce go-getter, that has the money and has disregard, and he just can get what he wants. But would you say that would be a myth again?
No, I didn't have that many clients like that. I had mostly clients, let's say, 50% were married. The married ones had sexless, loveless marriages, usually. One client hadn't been intimate with his wife for 10 years. Didn't want to get a divorce because he didn't want to break the family up. And his needs were not just physical, though. He wanted just to touch someone's hand or, have dinner with someone. Another client used to travel a lot for work, and he got sick of table for one, he said. So he'd like to, he just wanted a dinner companion. But definitely all of my clients were lonely and needed connection. And you can be a successful CEO, married with 3 kids, and still be incredibly lonely.
Like, how do you feel about the word prostitution or call girl or hooker and these different types of labels that are given to women who effectively are probably still with men who are seeking a range of things from that person?
Oh, look, I really hate the word prostitute. I think it's really derogatory, and we all prostitute ourselves, no matter what you do. Look, hooker and call girl, if you want to, I say hooker in my book a few times, and there's London Call Girl with Billie Piper. Sex worker, escort, companion, whatever you want to call it. I think when people say prostitute, they don't mean it nicely.
No.
So I have a real issue with that word. I'm not usually sensitive about things like that, but the word prostitute, I do. What do you think about the word prostitute?
I think as soon as I hear it, I get the visual. I get the visual of the girl, and it's not. I keep thinking like this, the film Pretty Woman. Let's be honest, that's a Hollywood movie. I don't know. I don't ever think. I feel that some people, for whatever reason, go into certain anything because maybe if I'm not saying they have to be broken. I'm not saying that they have to be deprived of something. But I think definitely there would be different choices that people would go into the industry. I think yours sounds incredibly positive, actually.
Yeah, I was lucky, and I know not other women are so lucky, and I know a lot of women struggle in the industry. Saying that, though, 99.9% of women I know in the industry absolutely thrive. I attracted a lot of women, particularly because I'm in my 40s. A lot of women approached me who are in their 40s, maybe have come out of divorce, maybe the husbands have run off, maybe they're left with the children, maybe they're sick of working in their corporate job, and they all saw my story and they read my story, and it somehow unlocked this desire in them, this sexual desire and need to do something a bit more exciting with their lives. And a lot of them had flirted with the idea of becoming an escort. And when they read my story, they thought, oh my God, this woman, she's a mum, she's in her 40s, she did it, why can't I? So I did attract that kind of women. And I had an escort agency where I employed women over 40. Incidentally, women over 40 are extremely popular, which is really nice to know. So I had an escort agency, Samantha X Angels, that I set up a few years ago, and I employed women over 40 because I could see there was this gap in the market. There was this need for men who wanted mature women to spend time with. Not every man wants a 21-year-old. A lot of men I met along the way were desperate for connection with women over 40 because they felt women over 40 had life experience, were more confident, more sure of themselves. And these women I attracted, they were professional women, they were educated, they were, stuck in jobs, sick of working 9 to 5, which is really 8 till 7, for shit pay. And they wanted to spend more time with their kids, and they wanted to have a more flexible job. And they flirted with the idea of being an escort, and they probably always had. And they saw me come along in my 40s and do it, and they thought, well, if she can do it, I can do it.
You do make it sound very appealing. But I think I do, I would suggest that most people would think about like the danger aspects of that. But with that in mind, we're talking about the word prostitution, how we all prostitute ourselves to varying degrees. What I think I've got my own idea about that, but what's yours first?
Well, I mean, I remember a very controversial radio host interviewed me when I first went public and said the word prostitute. And I said, we all prostitute ourselves. I said, you sold yourself to the devil because you signed up with a coconut water company. And every 5 minutes on this radio station, there's a coconut water ad. And you're calling me a prostitute. But he was a great guy, and we had a laugh about it. He says, oh, actually, you have a point, because I mean, when I was a beauty editor, I used to work for the glossy magazines, and I was only allowed to write about the products that advertised with us. The advertising companies were dictating what beauty editors would tell the public was a good lipstick because they were paying for advertising. So we all do it.
Right. My thought, because whenever I'm sort of talking about this with you, I immediately do go back to Sarah, my alter ego back in the days where I had no self-esteem. And I was incredibly, and this is one of the kind of outcomes that can go with the diagnosis that's MRKH, is that once you've made your vagina, you want to make damn sure that it's workable, two, that you're desirable enough for a man, and that you have sexual wealth or worth, I guess. And I would, it's not necessarily as literal as an exchange of drink or exchange of money or, all those sort of things. But I certainly was, and this is where we sort of can dovetail into a little bit of shame, I guess, with sex and shame, because I was very promiscuous, and I was trying to find a lot of answers within sex or within intimacy and trying to learn, the difference between the two. And I think some people can just assume that sex, if it's not within the society's neat kind of cute box, then it's just disgusting. Yeah. And that's where shame loves to breed.
Oh yeah, look, that's right. Shame does love to breed. And I have a lot, of course you get trolls, and I got a lot of trolls who said, don't you have any shame? And it's like, well, you clearly do. So, or you're making me feel like I need to have shame. And it's only since I left the industry that now I look back and I think, I can see the shame. And as hard as it is to work, I'm trying to work on not feeling ashamed. But society does a really good job of making women feel ashamed. If someone thinks I should be ashamed, I would question their view on shame and their view on sexuality. Because what is it about my story that makes you think of the word shame? That's what I would question.
Money? Transaction of money?
Well, I mean, marriage is a transaction,
Yeah.
Look, I mean, I was in a relationship with a wealthy man, and he bought a house, and he did this and he did that. I mean, and in return, I was his partner, and, blah, blah, blah. So everything's a transaction. I mean, I could have sex for free. I could have had sex for free. And I got to the stage, I think, in my life where I thought, I'm sick of having shit sex for free and then being ghosted by some dickhead. So I'm going to turn this around on its head. And if a man wants to waste my time, he can pay for it. And that's something I really believed in. And that's why it's very hard to date now, because I don't like having my time wasted by men.
I was just about to say, well, because you could make $1,500, wasn't it about $1,500 an hour? Did I read that?
Yes. You don't remind me, Ali. I missed that money. Don't remind me.
How do you feel about Samantha X now, and how does that sort of persona still follow you till present day?
Ali, I love her and I hate her. I love Samantha. Part of me wants to be Samantha, but I also hate Samantha because I feel she's ruined a lot of things for me. But it's really hard because it's a typical bipolar thing. But I also love her because she saved me sometimes. That power. Now we've talked about this, the power of disassociation. Mm-hmm. Now, disassociation is probably not healthy, but it can save you in some situations. And Samantha was great at disassociation, and I don't have that disassociation now, and it's incredibly painful not to have disassociation sometimes. And Samantha was great for that. You know what I mean? I'm sure you can relate to that.
I always think that it's harder. Well, it's harder to be healthier. It's really easy. For me, I found it really easy being dysfunctional because I didn't have to do anything. I just let the shame do it for me.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think a lot of us we all have our forms of disassociation, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's indulgence in overspending, whether it is, through sex and things like that. So when you kind of want to close the gap to lead a healthier life and all that kind of jim jam means, which is wonderful. Yeah, it's really hard to feel the feelings. So you're still kind of tapping into her. Is that good?
Well, I've accepted that Samantha X is my media name, and I've got my own podcast now, and I still write columns, and Samantha X is what sells. That's what I think, and she always will sell because sex sells. It's just I'm not Samantha in my day-to-day life. I'm not working. I'm not escorting. I'm not seeing clients. And that's not to say I don't miss that, because I do. I certainly miss the money. But and I don't know how you feel about Sarah now, but I sort of feel I can't go back to Samantha even if I wanted to go back now. So once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? You can't unknow it.
I want to hear your thoughts actually about why is something so common as sex carry so much shame across, even Instagram sites are getting, closed down left, right and center because of the word sex is mentioned in the most healthiest capacity. Why is it so underground?
Yeah, I don't look. It's the $1 million question. I think maybe because women are involved. When women are involved, because you can see the most horrific things on Instagram, and you can have topless men and sexy poses with men, but God forbid if a woman does it, you can't have a hint of a nipple showing. I don't know, maybe it's a fear. I mean, shame to me, it's fear-based. So if someone is angry about something, or the people that really responded to me and my story with anger, it's obviously triggers something in them, some shame in them. I don't know what it is, but it's, unfortunately, it will probably always be like this. Even though we're making very slow dents, very slow progress in our attitude towards sex. We're certainly talking about it a lot more. But yeah, I mean, the world is still very conservative, especially Australia.
What would you say to somebody who was legitimately wanting to pick this profession?
Don't is my number one advice. Because once you're in the sex industry, it's incredibly hard to get out. If you are going to do it and you've made your mind up, have a financial goal. Stick to it. Save your money. Don't buy Chanel handbags. You don't need them. Save your money. If you want to buy a house, buy a house. Don't waste your money. See it as a business and pay yourself a wage. You'll get paid a lot of money, but you'll also spend a lot of money. So be sensible. Stay away from drugs and alcohol. You need to have the control in the bedroom at all times. What else? I think that's about it.
I think the first one is don't. Obviously bipolar, and you obviously were an escort before your diagnosis of bipolar. How did bipolaring, what's the word? Influence Samantha X?
Look, I think with my bipolar, I was manic. I can see, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. I had days, weeks, months where I was on a high. I achieved so much. I wrote books. I had these great ideas. I I was so disassociated from my body, myself. So sex work was something I could do easily. And then the crashing lows would come. I'd feel really down. I wouldn't be able to achieve anything. I wouldn't leave the house. The feelings of shame, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd feel high again. It was just a never-ending cycle. And then when I was diagnosed and put on the medication, and then my mood started to even out, then I could see the what I'd done, and it was a bit embarrassing, to be honest.
Yeah, oh well, we all have. I think what was that saying? It is a bit of I guess a religious saying, but he who is without sin cast the first stone, because I think there are so many people. We've all got our little backstory, and if we were to be totally upfront and honest, I think we would be then very hard pressed to judge somebody else if we were to look back at our own stuff. And I don't think it's bad choices. I truly don't believe we go out of our way, unless we're doing something incredibly highly criminal and sadistic. I don't think that we make necessarily bad choices. I think we make choices based off what we wanted at that time. And I think a little bit of self-forgiveness is always quite handy when you've got flashbacks of like the stuff that I would do. It's just the stuff. Oh, God. It's all in the book. When the book gets published, I did share with you how I had this momentary desire to be, I think I wasn't going for high end. I think I was going for low end sex work. And it did. I remember I was sitting with a group of friends in a pub, and we were drinking, of course, and I was in a very dysfunctional, abusive relationship. The writing was on the wall, but as a 20-year-old, you don't see that. And I was just like, I'm just going to go and sell my body. Like, this is too hard. This life is too hard. Being me is too hard. And then, I got in a cab and thought London was, the big apple of sex work industry, and I'd find it. And then I sobered up, and the taxi took me back to the pub, and I joined the group of people, and no one was any the wiser that I could have. The sliding doors moment. Can you imagine? So, we've got these really lovely little cute questions that we like to ask our guests as well.
Oh, yes, go on.
Wrap up okay. So here at the Stigma Shakers podcast, our aim is to shake up and blend unique social smoothies for our listeners to digest around the topics of stigma and shame. And so now our discussion's coming to an end. I'd like to ask you, what ingredients would you want to have in your social smoothie to improve people's outlook, mental health, or judgments? What ingredient would it be?
So I would choose compassion, because compassion is something I really learnt as an escort, and it's helped me understand people better, and it's helped me in the way I react to people. I mean, it's still sometimes someone can say something to me and I'll judge them. We all judge. When you have compassion for someone, I think it really can shift your perspective, and that's something I learned as Samantha. So I think compassion is the number one ingredient.
It's beautiful. And what would you call your smoothie?
X-rated.
X-rated for extra blend. How can people find you, lovely Amanda?
So my Instagram is Amanda Goff official, and Goff is Goff for Freddie. My books are Hooked and Back on Top by Samantha X, and my podcast is called Exposed with just an X by Samantha X.
Amazing. And thank you so much for chatting today about this. It's been really eye-opening, and I think hopefully it's just scratched a level away from just, the surface level conversations that some would have. And, you're a beautiful human being.
Too.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just.
Oh, thank you. You too.
I'm not very good at the wrap up.
Thank you for having me.